My name is Justin. I'm one of the pastors here at Christ City. I want to welcome you all after this Thanksgiving weekend. I hope you all had a restful Thanksgiving break. It may not have been restful, but that's what I hope for you. And that wherever you were, whatever you were doing, and whatever your feelings around this holiday, that you were able to get some time with loved ones. My family and I were here this week. We hosted a small gathering, a little Friendsgiving, including 3 of us who celebrated our birthdays this last week. 3 out of like 5 adults. So, I succeeded at not ruining a turkey on my first try. So it was a start. Yeah, no, I'll take that. This does seem like a particularly appropriate occasion to acknowledge the Piscataway and the Cotchtank tribes, who watched over the land we now meet on until their displacement. We owe all the original inhabitants of the land, our lands, a great debt. I didn't grow up here. I didn't grow up in the U.S. I didn't learn a whole lot about American history until I moved here, because that's actually not something that everybody in the world learns about. And in case that wasn't intuitive. You usually learn about the history of the place where you are, which is, anyway, you get the point. But I do remember when I did move here, I remember being, learning about it, starting to learn about it, and being so broken and heartbroken by so much of this country's history. This country that I love and love getting to live here, but so much of it is tragic and hard. Before Christopher Columbus arrived in 1492, it was estimated that between 5 and 15 million indigenous people lived in North America. But less than 4 centuries later, by the end of the Indian Wars in the late 1800s, largely because of government-sponsored and often church-supported genocide, that number was less than 238,000. From 5 million to 238,000. There's so much tragedy that it can be hard to wrap our minds around, let alone undo it. But there is always an opportunity to repent and repair. And at least one response and one responsibility is to recommit ourselves to the work of peace. And peace is what we've been talking about this month in this series, whose title comes from the words of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew's Gospel: "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. We planned this series way back in the beginning of the year, not knowing how timely it would be, though God did, I think. And I would venture to say, if we think about it, it's always timely, as peace always seems just out of reach. I've been so grateful to learn from those who've gone before in these last few weeks. Pastor Matthew kicked off the series by introducing us to the biblical concept of peace, shalom in Hebrew, eirene in Greek. In the Bible, peace is not just an absence of conflict, it's the presence of something. It's not just a ceasefire, it's the presence of proactive right relating and right relationships. Peace as the way things ought to be for us, between us, and within us. In week 2, Pastor Lisa talked about the things that make for peace. She said we cannot get to peace except by peaceful means. She named 3 of those ingredients, 3 things that make for peace: forgiveness, rest, and love. Forgiveness instead of hostility. Rest as resistance, recognizing we are not called to do everything for everyone all the time, but we have to find spaces and make spaces to rest so that we can be about this hard work in a sustainable way. Yeah. And love as the foundation of and the way to peace. Last week, we got to hear from a Peacemakers panel, a practitioners panel, Shiri and Jeremiah and Sonia, and there was much wisdom to gain from their experience, and so much more we could have delved into. There's too much to summarize, so if you didn't catch it, go and watch it, go listen to it if you weren't here last week. Last Sunday was also my birthday, by the way, and the staff continued their celebration of me on Tuesday at our staff meeting. And the reason I'm telling you this, we'll get there in a second. One of the celebration activities, which Nikki planned, was finding a favorite Dallas Willard quote and reading it as if I were to say it. Now, for those of you who don't know, Dallas Willard was a pastor and a philosopher, passed away about 10 years ago, but whose writings on discipleship and spiritual formation, on who we are and who we are becoming, continue to shape me and how I live and how I pastor. It was one of the most formative experiences on my ministry and spirituality, and I used to quote him a lot in my sermons, and hence the celebration activity. And what we discovered doing that activity is that I actually internalized a lot of Dallas Willard, so we can't actually tell what he said and what I made my own. One of the things that Willard says is that spiritual formation, spiritual transformation requires 3 ingredients: vision, intention, and means. Vision, intention, and means. And he would say that the most important part is the vision. The vision, seeing what's possible. It's knowing what's possible so we might believe it may be possible, so we might set out to accomplish it. That's our intention. And do whatever is available to us to get there. That's the means. One of the problems of our day, and I would suggest in DC this is especially so, is that oftentimes we are so caught up in the doing of things, the means, that we forget to ask ourselves if what we are doing is actually getting us somewhere that we want to go. We get so busy. Head down. Get it done. Get it done. What are we getting done? And where is it leading us? Whether we think about it on a geopolitical scale, there's conflict in Israel and Palestine, or Russia and Ukraine, or pertinent to me, China and Hong Kong, or whether we think about it on a national scale, we are less than a year from the 2024 elections. So it's all about to kick off. Or a citywide scale, increases in crime almost across the board, and especially youth crime here in our city. Or in our friendships and families, or even in ourselves, it can be hard to see what is and imagine what could be. Right? It can be hard to see what is and imagine what could be. It's just like it's hard when you get a cold and you try to remember what it was like to be healthy. You're just like, but I can't breathe. I don't remember what it was like to breathe. Or when you're stressed and you're trying to remember what it was like to not have that weight on your shoulders or that weight on your chest. Or when you're in the middle of conflict, your instinctive responses are fight, flight, or freeze, not pause and build toward a better way. Or when you're caught in the grasp of addiction, or you know someone who is, and you just don't know what will break the cycle, what could break the cycle, because it has gone on for so long. It can be hard to see what is and imagine what could be. Maintaining a vision of a better world, watering our imaginations for what's possible can be hard, especially when things don't go well or they aren't going well, especially when it feels easier to give in to exhaustion or cynicism. Why have hope anyway? Why keep going anyway? Willard would say the vision for a better world, a better life, a better existence is crucial to change. Jesus came and lived and died and rose again, preaching and embodying the good news of salvation and liberation and love, at least in part, to help us see what was possible for ourselves and for our world. Another philosopher, Ernst Bloch, who fled Nazi Germany in the 1930s, said the most tragic form of loss isn't the loss of security, it's the loss of the capacity to imagine that things could be different. The loss of the capacity to imagine that things could be different. And so today's passage from Isaiah 65 is a vision. It's a vision of hope. And a vision so we might have hope. It was written several hundred years before Jesus to a people in exile, a people without hope, a people displaced, mistreated, marginalized, a people who had forgotten their God, a people of God who had forgotten God. The opening verses of this chapter of Isaiah describe a rebellious people walking in a way that isn't good, following their own plans. And after spending the first half of the chapter, 16 verses, calling out the disobedient, calling out the death dealers, God has this to say to the few that will choose to be faithful. God says, look, I'm creating a new heaven and a new earth. Past events won't be remembered. They won't come to mind. Be glad and rejoice forever in what I'm creating, because I'm creating Jerusalem as a joy and her people as a source of gladness. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and be glad about my people. No one will ever hear the sound of weeping or crying in it again. No more will babies live only a few days, or the old fail to live out their days. The one who dies at 100 will be like a young person, and the one falling short of 100 will seem cursed. They will build houses and live in them. They will plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They won't build for others to live in, nor plant for others to eat. Like the days of a tree will be the days of my people. My chosen will make full use of their handiwork. They won't labor in vain, nor bear children to a world of horrors. Because they will be people blessed by the Lord, they along with their descendants. Before they call, I will answer. While they're still speaking, I will hear. Wolf and lamb will graze together. The lion will eat straw like the ox, but the snake, its food will be dust. They won't hurt or destroy at any place on my holy mountain, says the Lord. There are passages of Scripture that seem ever relevant, ever timely. This is one of them for me. As I read these words, I have images flashing in my mind from the news, from Gaza, devastation, the rubble, of the reunions on both sides as hostages have been exchanged these last few days. And it is the stories of the young and the old, those who are still here and those who are no longer here. Those are the ones that break me the most, that have broken me the most. No more will babies live only a few days, or the old fail to live out their days. As I read the words of Isaiah 65, I think about the violence and inequality in our city. I think about the conditions of our neighborhoods. I think about all of us for whom work is often a struggle, who feel like we do not get to enjoy the work of our hands. Do we not long for a better world? Old Testament scholar Walter Brueggemann lays out the qualities of this God life that we see in Isaiah 65, this all-encompassing peace, this shalom we are invited to dream of. There's a stability, there's an order that guarantees long life, that guarantees a quality of life in community, that implies that there is deep community, communal relations, supporting one another. There's economic stability. Brueggemann says nobody is threatened, nobody's at risk, nobody's in jeopardy, because in this new city it has policies and practices and protective structures that guarantee what must have been envisioned as an egalitarian possibility. No one is threatened, no one is at risk, no one is in jeopardy. There's an agenda of well-being for children. Their lives are under blessing. They are not born into a world of horrors. There's the availability of God, the involvement, the access of God. Isaiah writes, before they call, I will answer. Before they call, God is with us. And there's a reordering of creation. We hear about the animals. Even the animals learn new instincts. Even the animals. All of creation is impacted. This passage in Isaiah 65, it parallels Isaiah 11 and Isaiah 25, where it says, God will swallow up death forever. The Lord God will wipe tears from every face. He will remove his people's disgrace from off the whole earth. for the Lord has spoken. The Isaiah 65 passage, it also references God's holy mountain. God's holy mountain is a symbol of where God dwells, an image of where what God wants to happen actually happens. These are passages that get referenced in the very last book of the Bible, Revelation. And the promise is that God will dwell with us in a new way, in an unadulterated and unfiltered and unfettered way, in person, not just virtually on a screen. These prophecies point to the end. They describe the hope we are yearning for, describe the place we're going to, they describe the reality we are living and working towards, and as such, they can be both inspiring and depressing. Because it is where God promises us we are heading, and because we're not there yet. We're not there yet. And yet that not there-ness, that ache, can be an invitation too. American poet Amanda Gorman wrote Hymn for the Hurting last summer after the shootings in Uvalde, Texas. It goes like this. Everything hurts. Our hearts shadowed and strange. Minds made muddied and mute. We carry tragedy, terrifying and true, and yet none of it is new. We knew it as home, as horror, as heritage. Even our children cannot be children. Cannot be. Everything hurts. It's a hard time to be alive and even harder to stay that way. We're burdened to live out these days while at the same time blessed to outlive them. This alarm is how we know we must be altered, that we must differ or die, that we must triumph or try. Thus, while hate cannot be terminated, it can be transformed into a love that lets us live. May we not just grieve, but give. May we not just ache, but act. May our signed right to bear arms never blind our sight from shared harm. May we choose our children over chaos. May another innocent never be lost. Maybe everything hurts, our hearts shadowed and strange. But only when everything hurts may everything change. Only when everything hurts may everything change. Scholars agree that God, through the prophet Isaiah, casts this vision in Isaiah 65 as a hope for this world now, not just a hope for the forever world to come. And while the language of creating a new heaven and a new earth, it can sound like God is doing away with the old and completely starting from scratch, making it a whole new everything. What we see in the text, what we read in the text is actually a picture of renewal. It's a picture of remaking. It's a picture of recreating. It's an interruption of the status quo. See, it was in Jerusalem, the capital, that corruption was happening. It's in Jerusalem that the disobedience was being decreed, all that was denounced by God in the first part of the chapter. And so the counter-narrative, the vision of God, is the restoration of Jerusalem. A return to the fullness of its name, City of Peace. City of flourishing. A few weeks ago, I was catching up on a TV series, Loki. And there was one exchange between two of the characters that felt so in line with this series that I had to rewind and watch it again. And I wanted to share it with you all. I don't think you'll need a whole lot of context to get what they're saying, but if you do, we can talk after. And also, if you're not caught up, I don't think it's going to spoil a whole lot for you. It's just one conversation. And if it does, I apologize in advance. Here it is.
What if you are wrong to believe that this place can be any better? What if I was wrong to spare him? It would just be easier to burn this place down and start from scratch.
Sure, burn it down. Easy. Annihilating is easy. Razing things to the ground is easy. Trying to fix what's broken is hard. Hope is hard.
Trying to fix what's broken is hard. Hope is hard. It takes much longer to heal than it does to harm. It takes much longer to rebuild than it does to demolish. The work of peacemaking is a heavier lift than the work of warmongering. It's less profitable, that's for sure. The work of tearing down with our words is far easier than the work of building up, or holding our tongue, or holding space long enough and often enough to earn someone's trust. The work of breaking cycles of violence, breaking generational curses, unprocessed, untransformed trauma and hurt enacted on or just passed on to the innocent and the vulnerable. Choosing to forgive rather than claiming your revenge, your retribution, that's peacemaking. That's hard. But it is the way of God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who make peace, who build peace, who sow peace, who deal peace, who work for peace, for they will be called children of God. Peace in the Bible, as we've said, is the presence of right relating, of right relationships. It's the presence of wholeness and health and flourishing for all, where our welfare and our well-being are inseparable from one another's and from creation itself, because we are interconnected, we are intertwined, we are interdependent. And so, blessed are those who work for the mutual flourishing of all. Blessed are those who seek liberation for all. Those who tear down the walls between us and them. Those who build bridges. Those who hold us together in health. For they will be called children of God. What is it to be a child of God? We often understand that as a label that affirms, that bestows affection or value, that a title that denotes acceptance or belonging. But to be a child of God is more than that. It's to bear the family resemblance. It's for others to look at us, see us, and know what God is like. God is a peacemaker. God seeks the flourishing of all. God builds bridges to those who might be God's enemies. God offers healing indiscriminately. God works to break the chains we put on others and on ourselves and the systems and structures that keep people from flourishing. It's precisely what we see embodied in Jesus. Jesus was God, the peacemaker in human form. In Jesus, we get to see who God is and who we are. In Jesus, the Son of God, we get to see what it means for us to be children of God, to be called children of God. We get to see what we're called to, what we're invited to, what we were created for. We get to see what's possible. Vision. And then intention. Do you want to get there? Do we want to get there? That world where there is no more weeping or death. Will you do what it takes? Or maybe more faithfully, will you do what is yours to do to get there? Now let's name from the get-go that we do not have control over everything. And we learned this in our last series on Ecclesiastes. We cannot control everything. We can't control others, for starters. Life is great until you have to deal with others. we cannot accomplish everything we want to. Perhaps we may never see all of the fruit of our faithfulness, even if the fruit is promised to us. Abraham never lived to see his descendants number as many as the stars. It was promised to him, and it came to pass, but he didn't get to see it when he walked this earth. Moses never set foot in the promised land. To live by faith, to live in hope, is to know that we may not have all the answers now, and we may never get them this side of Christ's return. It is to accept that we may not get the results we hope for, microwaved and ready to go in 3 minutes. There are hopes that will not be met 100% in this present life, even for our own healing, let alone for the intractable conflicts around the country and the world. But there's a concept in Jewish thought, Jewish theology, called tikkun olam. Tikkun olam, it means repairing the world. Repairing the world is the idea that we have an obligation to work for a better world because God invites us to be part of the creation and recreation, even if things are hard, even if we don't understand everything, even if we still have questions. Work for the good of the world. Make peace, one step at a time, one action at a time, one day at a time. Recently, I participated in a training with an organization called Service Never Sleeps, which works to resource and educate people around allyship in the work of justice. And one of the things that most stuck with me came when we were talking about the spectrum of response that you might get as an advocate on any issue of justice, ranging from active opposition to passive opposition to neutral or apathetic to passive support to active solidarity or allyship or support. Okay, it's a spectrum. And what Whitney Parnell, the trainer, said was this: any movement is a win for the movement. Any movement is a win for the movement. So easy for us to think in dualistic terms that unless someone goes from active opponent to active supporter like the Apostle Paul on the Damascus Road, or maybe crosses that middle line from opponent to supporter like someone praying the sinner's prayer, it's not worth celebrating. But any movement in the right direction is a win for the movement. Friends, we are on the path of peacemaking. It's a journey. Every step is an arrival of sorts, and any step toward peace is worth celebrating. It was one of the nuggets of wisdom from last week's panel. Celebrate the small wins. So as we close out this all too brief series today, I want to offer some practical steps. 6 practical steps. They're going to be real fast on this path. Not the process itself. The process will take time, but I'm going to talk about them real fast. 6 steps on this path of peacemaking. A few means to go with the vision and the intention. Step 1 is let yourself feel the incongruity. Let yourself feel the not rightness in your life, in your relationships, in your family, in your neighborhood, in your community, in our city, in our country. Let yourself feel it. We don't like to let ourselves feel the discomfort because it's uncomfortable. Makes sense. And so we do whatever we need to run away or to medicate or to distract ourselves. Let yourself name the pain. Name the loss. Name the ache. Take time to lament. Maybe when everything hurts, may everything change. Okay, that's number 1. Let yourself feel. Number 2, imagine how it might be different. Whatever the situation is that comes to mind, whatever the situation that you're working through, Imagine what might be different. Imagine what flourishing and liberation might look like in that situation, in that context, in that relationship, in that part of the world. Imagine what it would be for people to live in peace. Palestinians and Israelis. What does flourishing, liberation, justice, what do those things look like? Both free from the fear of violence. Does it sound like a pipe dream or the hope of God? They may not be too far apart. Imagine how it might be different. Number 3, commit yourself and commit that situation to God in prayer. Just hold your hurt, hold your hope, hold your hopelessness before the God who heals, before the Spirit who works in all things for good. Commit it in prayer. Prayer is not nothing. And oftentimes God calls us in prayer to act and to move. But I know our temptation in this city, I just got to do stuff anyway. Just might as well get busy doing it. Invite the Lord in. Take a pause. Number 4, ask God for what you need. Be honest with God. Ask God for what you need. Is it courage to say something, to do something? Is it rest? Is it relief? Is it the strength to forgive someone or someone's? Is it a vision of what could be? Lord, I don't have the imagination. I don't know what it might look like. Would you give me that? Would you plant that? Is it the fortitude to back up your intention? Have a lot of false starts. Want to see something through. Ask God for what you need. And then number 5, ask God for who you need. Ask God for who you need. Find your people. Find your community. Find those who will walk with you toward peace. Find those who will work with you for peace. We were not created to live or love alone. It is a hard task to be a voice crying in the wilderness. And even John the Baptist found disciples. Your fellow peacemaking pilgrims may be in your life already. Or you may be asking God for new connections, deeper connections. And then number 6, take the first next step. Maybe it's identifying this portion of peace, whether it's for you, whether it's between you and someone else, or whether it's within you, that portion of peace that feels particularly challenging, particularly convicting. Maybe God is inviting you to step into that. Maybe it's learning and engaging in practices of peacemaking, such as the 6 laid out by Tawas that Shiri mentioned last week. Listen to understand, hold competing perspectives in tension, own your agency, own your responsibility, center the leadership of the marginalized, self-interrogate, and advocate. Maybe it's going to your small group and saying, hey, I really care about this, and I really want to do something about it, but I don't know what, I don't know where to start, and I would really like to not do it on my own. Start where you are, where you are is, but do start. We don't just talk so that we get more information. I'm not just up here so that you have more information to go away with. Start where you are, but do start. Start walking the path of peacemaking and see where the Lord leads. Would you pray with me? As our prayer this morning, I want to read a poem by Bishop Ken Untener. Some of you may have heard it. It's called Prophets of a Future Not Our Own. It was written in honor of Archbishop Oscar Romero. It goes like this. It helps, now and then, to step back and take a long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is even beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is a way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. No statement says all that could be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No confession brings perfection. No pastoral visit brings wholeness. No program accomplishes the church's mission. No set of goals and objectives includes everything. This is what we are about. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything. And there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something, and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders. We are ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future not our own.